Okay, I'm going to show you how to make this meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and spinach dinner in less than 30 minutes. Here are the ingredients that you'll need. I'll put all of them in the description box below, but this is how they look if you want to purchase them at the store. And that's the ground turkey that I use to make the meatloaf. So let's get into how we make the meatloaf part. You start with the meatloaf in the bowl, and then I'm going to add some chopped up onions and green pepper. Of course, everybody usually has this in their refrigerator already, and so I use that to kind of season it, get it all mixed in. Meatloaf is basically a hodgepodge of a lot of different seasonings, but the main ingredient is the ground turkey, or some people use beef. I use ground turkey. I'm going to add my Lawry's seasoned salt, onion powder, and I have the McCormick Grill Masters steak seasoning. And so I'm going to go ahead and season it. Some people may be a little heavier on the seasoning than others. I use a good amount. I don't know how much it is in measurement size, but you can take a look about how much I put in of each of the seasoning ingredients. So I use the Lawry salt. I'm a little heavy on the Lawry sometimes, but I'll just mix it all in so that it's evenly distributed throughout the ground turkey. And then I usually a little bit of onion powder, even though I put actual onions in, I'll use a little bit of onion powder as far as for taste purposes concerned. So I'll mix it up, and then I'll get ready for my next ingredients to add to the bowl. That's a dash little more of Lawry's. Okay, I'll use one egg. The egg is basically just to hold things together for real. So you just use one egg to kind of as a holding agent in addition to the breadcrumbs. Both of those agents actually hold the meatloaf together in the loaf pan. So just mix it all up. And then we're going to go ahead and get the other ingredients after we mixed everything in. And oh, Worcestershire sauce. I always get tongue-tied on that. You use that to kind of bring out the nice taste in the ground turkey as well, in addition to the other seasonings. So you're going to go ahead and mix that all up. Okay, I'm going to use the breadcrumbs. I use plain. Some people use also the Italian seasoned breadcrumbs. You can use any one. Like I said, it basically just acts like a holding agent. I'm going to use the Italian seasoning breadcrumbs. It adds a little bit of a different taste to it, but what I'm just using is plain breadcrumbs. And you can also see about gluten-free options, because I know my son is allergic to wheat, and so there are some gluten-free breadcrumbs if you want to use that as well, so that your loved ones can also enjoy a gluten-free meatloaf dish. Now I'm going to use the ketchup, and it's ketchup and barbecue sauce that is the active ingredient that kind of are the foundation of meatloaf. Ketchup and a little bit of barbecue sauce, not as much barbecue sauce as you use ketchup, but I mix in both to kind of give a good taste to it. So you'll see me put some barbecue sauce in, but not nearly as much as I put the ketchup in there. So you're going to go ahead and mix it all up, make sure it's nice and mixed in. Okay, and then you're gonna use some cheddar cheese. That's an 8-ounce bag I have there, and I used about half the bag. So I guess essentially you're gonna be using about 4 ounces. You can be a little bit more generous with the cheese if you're a more cheesier person, but in this particular dish, I used about 4 ounces. It was half a bag of an 8-ounce bag of shredded cheddar cheese. Okay, add a little bit of more ketchup. I wanted to make sure it's nice and moist. The ketchup helps keep moist while it's baking in the oven. So go ahead and mix it in so that it's moist. Okay, I'm gonna move some of the stuff out the way because I got a lot of ingredients out on the counter. And I'm gonna get the loaf pan and the Pam shortening to grease the loaf pan before I actually put in the meatloaf. So you'll see me greasing the pan. And then what I'll do is put all the meatloaf into the loaf pan. And if you buy the size that I showed at the beginning, it's kind of the perfect size to cook in the loaf pan. So I'm not sure like if it's a pound or so like before it's cooked, but it fits perfectly into that size loaf pan. So if you're trying to calculate whether it be enough or you have too much, that size actually fits perfectly. Then what you're gonna do is top it off with some more ketchup at the top. And what you're gonna do is cover it, and then you're gonna pop it in the oven. I would say depending on how your oven is, it can be in there for about 45 minutes. Some people might put it on a little higher so they can cook a little faster, but 30 to 45 minutes. And you'll check on it and take the aluminum foil off about halfway through. I have it on 380 for mine. So now I'm going to show you how you make the spinach portion of the dinner dish. You got to have some vegetables. So I'm going to go ahead and add some butter to the skillet. That's going to be kind of my start. Now some people may use different kind. I'm a little bit generous with the butter. I always have butter in the refrigerator. So we're going to go ahead and add some butter to the skillet first and let it start melting. And then I'm going to go ahead and open the bags of frozen spinach that I buy. And they're not name brand. They're just, I think they're Walmart brand actually. Bag chopped spinach. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those open and get them ready for when I actually put them in the skillet. And actually when I'm cooking the spinach, I actually cook it with cut up onions on top. And I got that tip from my mother-in-law. She add onions to it and it gives a little extra oomph of taste when you're actually cooking the spinach. So shout out to my mother-in-law for giving me a tip on how to improve the taste of spinach. So you're gonna let the butter melt nice and good before you actually add the spinach on top. And I'm using 3 bags, and you might think that's a lot, but when spinach kind of cooks down, it's kind of like you got like 8 big spoonfuls of it. So just keep in mind using 3 bags is not gonna be too much. If you want like a family of 4, it'll be sufficient. So that's my cut up onions that I'll add to the spinach after I put the spinach in the saucepan. Okay, so the butter is pretty much melted. I'm gonna add first bag. I'm gonna add my second bag. Make sure I got everything out. I'll smooth down so that it can start to pour out the saucepan. And I'm gonna add my third bag. And I'm using a pretty large saucepan so that right now it'll need it, but when it cooks down, it won't necessarily need such a large saucepan. And kind of evenly distribute it so it's covered over the butter that I already had in there. And then add the onion on top. I think that's about half of the onion that I showed you at the beginning that you're going to use for the actual top of the spinach dish. So just spread it all around the top, enough to cover the top of the spinach, the chopped spinach. Oh, my camera kind of went a little wonky. There we go. So get that cooking. All right, so then we're gonna make some mashed potatoes. I have 2 large russet potatoes, and I'm gonna cut them up and then put them in a pot to boil. And so cut them up as small as you can so that they cook a little faster, more even. I noticed that if you make bigger pieces, it takes longer for them to boil. So, and you wanna cut, like I said, 2 potatoes serves about 4, family of 4. So if that's what you're looking to do. 2 of those larger ones should be sufficient. Okay, I'm gonna put them in the pot, and then I'm gonna cut up the other half of the onion that I used already. I used half of it, remember, with the spinach. Cut the other half up and actually put the onion, the chopped up onion, in the water with the potatoes, and it gives it a kind of a taste to it. Another mother-in-law tip, she uses a lot of onion in her recipes, and it's like, oh, this tastes pretty good. So I took it and used it in my recipes as well. So you'll see me adding the onions to the pot of water. Use enough water to cover the potatoes and then add the onion. So I'm checking on my spinach. The onions are still kind of white. They haven't gotten clear yet. That's how you know when they're cooked. They're still white, so it'll need a little bit more time for the spinach, but I'll move things around so they won't start burning. And I'll adjust the temperature a little bit just so that it doesn't burn too quickly. Put the top back on. I'll check on the potatoes. They're still not boiling yet, so they're fine. Check the eye of the stove. Alright, then you'll stir it again to keep things going. This is all while your meatloaf is cooking in the oven, so you can be doing two things at once. The potatoes, when you feel them a little soft as you're stirring them, that's how you know they're cooked better. If they still feel kind of hard, then you need to leave them in there until they feel soft enough when you're stirring them around. Okay, so the onions are starting to look clear, so that I know that they're cooking. I use the garlic salt kind of at the end of the cooking so that it doesn't cook away. So I'll add some garlic salt to that. You can use as much as you want. Garlic salt is a little strong, so be careful if you're going to be heavy on the garlic salt. It's not like regular salt, but to use it to season the spinach, it tastes pretty delicious. And I'll stir it in and let it simmer for the last few minutes. I think the stove, either I'll turn it off or turn it down so that it's basically just finishing up the last bit of the spinach. So that dish will be done. All right, I'm checking on the meatloaf. It looks like it's still cooking. I took the top off. And then my spinach is done. I took my potatoes out, and I'm gonna go ahead and put some canned milk in there, some butter, and some garlic salt as I make my mashed potato portion of the dinner. So I add my butter. Yes, I use a lot of butter. You can use a substitute if you like, but I like butter. Add a little bit of the milk. Oh, just gotta get some of the opening a little better. Pour some of the milk in there. And then I use actually like a cake mixer to mix it up. Some people use a potato masher. I use the cake mixer because it gets it nice and moist like I like it. And then I kind of use the spoon to kind of see if it's mixed up enough. And then I'll season it with some garlic salt. Like I said, you can season it as your desire. And they seem pretty mashy to me. So that'll be the finishing up of the dish. And then I'll go ahead and plate everything. So you have your mashed potatoes, spinach, and meatloaf.